Hi, I'm Cullen Bunn. I am the writer of Shadowman.
So, Cullen, can you talk about how you got involved in this project?
Well, yeah, so, I've been writing comics now for a good while, and I had, at other companies, I had worked with Heather Antos, who is the editor of Shadowman. And when she came over to Valiant, she reached out to me and just asked, hey, would you be interested in doing a horror comic with us? Heather and I have talked about doing a horror comic together for years, and we're just never able to make those pieces fit together. So this was the perfect opportunity. She called and they asked if I was interested in doing the book. I was, because I feel like Shadowman is like a character I was born to write. And I wrote a pitch. I wrote a pitch for Valiant and sent it in. And to hear Heather tell it, there was one line in the pitch that really sold everybody on the idea. I can't tell you what that line is because it's a big, sort of a big spoiler that surfaces in the 3rd or 4th issue of the series.
For people who are unaware about what's the process when you write a comic? Because where do you start? Do you start just writing paragraphs and ideas, or because obviously there's dialogue, there's action you have to write as well. Does all that fall on you?
Yeah, so I go through every script I write. By the time I get to the scripting phase, where I'm actually, writing all of the panel descriptions and the dialogue and everything, I've gone through several outlines for every issue. So it starts with a general, idea, maybe a paragraph or two of what you want to do, with that issue. And then I break it down. My first outline is usually very, very rough. I mean, it'll read fight scene, 4 pages, just super high level. And then I take it and I break it down again, and I kind of write in a little more detail every scene of the comic. And then I take those scenes and I write down how many pages I think each of those scenes will take. When I'm done with that, I find out I've scripted or I've outlined a 60-page comic. So then I have to go back and I have to cut it down and reduce and condense and compress the story to make sure I'm getting all the fat out, so it's just the story we want to tell. And I get it to the perfect length, and then I do one more outline, which is almost it's like a bulleted point. It's basically I outline every page, and I do, if it's a 6-panel page, there are 6 bullets that say these are the things that are happening in each of these panels. That's usually the one I send to editorial, let them look at it, make sure they approve it, because once they approve it, there's no surprises, because then I take it and I write the script. My scripts go very fast because I've outlined it so much. I have a very clear view of what every page is going to look like. And yeah, as I'm writing the script, occasionally I'll write bits of dialogue and stuff in the outlining stages, but as I'm writing the script, that's when I write all the full dialogue, and everything comes together right then.
It sounds like a very involved process. It's a very organized process.
Well, it's interesting because if you're writing prose, if you're writing prose, you're not really limited. If you want to write a 700-page novel, you can write a 700-page novel. But with comics, you are limited because you're limited by the number of issues in an arc or the issues in a series. You're limited by the number of pages in an issue, and you're limited by the number of panels that can fit on a page. And you really have to keep all those things in mind if it's all going to come together as a solid story at the end.
Obviously, back in the late 90s, the comics have evolved, the writing process, art process. How have you seen the comic industry as a whole evolve since the late 90s when Shadowman was introduced? And probably even before that, because it's usually they're out for a while before they're adapted into video games.
Well, I think comics are a little more decompressed. I think readers want a little more they really want to get into the nitty-gritty of the characters, and they want to take their time, and they want to really look at pacing. Comics in the days of old, the pacing was very rapid. Things were just going boom, 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 boom. And readers now are looking for a little bit more, a little bit slower pace. And you know, in some cases you get comics where you feel like, oh man, I read that comic in 4 minutes. I'm done with the issue. And that's just a matter of the reader and the way the writer is putting the story together, and really the type of comic it is. I think with Shadowman, we've told a comic or we've written a comic and put the comic together that is going to be great fun to look at, and you're going to want to turn page to page as quickly as you can to see this awesome artwork. But we also have a story that I think readers will be able to dig into and not even just read once, but read it again and again and get different things out of it.
Is it easier, or maybe it's another word, maybe that's a wrong word, maybe is it more creative for you to write a comic for something like Shadowman as opposed to taking other characters that have been around since the 60s and 70s, like Spider-Man or X-Men or whatever, Venom, you know?
Yeah, I think there was definitely a little more freedom with Shadowman. So obviously he's a character who has a history, and and has other incarnations in recent years, and I wanted to make sure I was honoring those incarnations and those stories. But I also wanted to make this my own, and I even approached this. I said to myself, I'm gonna write this comic like it's a creator-owned comic. I'm gonna write it like like I created Shadowman, and because Valiant was so open with me doing new things with the character, and exploring some new avenues, I was able to really kind of go crazy with it. And currently Shadowman's not showing up in 6 other titles. He's not involved in any big crossovers or anything like that at the moment. So I didn't have any of that to kind of stress over and worry about either. And was able to just focus on telling what I think is one of the, is a Shadowman story that I think readers are really going to dig.
So is this Shadowman, is this your story? Is it a complete retelling of the Shadowman's origin and his, his history, or is this a continuation of the comic in the 90s?
So it's a continuation of the comics that have come out in recent years, in the, since Valiant's sort of resurgence, however many years ago that's been. It seems like time's moving very quickly lately. So it's not a retelling, it's not a reboot. I don't spend a lot of time telling readers how Shadowman got his abilities or where he comes from or anything like that. But I did put it together in a way that if you've read Shadowman, read the other series that have come out recently, you'll be able to follow this and enjoy it and see a continuation of that story. But if you haven't read Shadowman, there's no reason you can't pick up this issue and completely understand what's happening and who Shadowman is, what his powers are, in at least enough to understand the story, what his goals are. And I really wanted it to be very friendly for both existing and new readers.
Did you go back and play the old PC, Dreamcast, and 64 video game at all when you were starting to write it?
Not for this. I mean, I thought about that, and I even watched a few of the playthroughs and things like that. But yeah, I felt like that was probably best for me to leave my memories of the video game behind for a little bit with writing this. I do have, I have memories of playing that game back in the day.
Did you game as a kid? Did you play games on the N64, PC, Super Nintendo, anything like that?
Oh yeah, I played, I played games. Look, you got to keep in mind, I was playing, the original Pong system and the Atari 2400. That was, that's where my home video gaming was, and going to the arcade far too often. But yeah, I played games all throughout, from that time as being very young through, early college days until I couldn't afford a game system and I had to rely on playing at other people's houses. So yeah, I played a lot of video games. I don't know that I was ever any good at any of them.